We spend billions of dollars a year on skincare. If you walk into any pharmacy today, you are greeted by entire aisles dedicated to cleansers, moisturizers, retinoids, expensive serums, and the infamous 12-step Korean beauty routine. All of this simply to avoid a single, tiny, harmless-looking white zit. We buy expensive dandruff shampoos that cost $20 a bottle and smell like a freshly cut pine forest. We spend tens of thousands of dollars on surgical hair transplants just to hide a receding hairline that nobody else actually notices. The modern human spends more time looking at their own pores than at the stars. But now, let's play a terrifying thought experiment. Close your eyes for a second and imagine you wake up tomorrow morning with a splitting headache. You are not in your cozy bed. You are lying on a pile of dry leaves inside a damp, dark, gray stone cave. The temperature is freezing. You have a rusted wooden spear next to you and your nose is running like a broken faucet. There is no pharmacy. There is no doctor 3 miles away. There is no hot shower, no bar of soap, and absolutely no Google to search up, is this a tension migraine or a rare brain parasite? But wait, it gets worse. You look down at your hands and arms. There is no moisturizer, no sunblock, and because there are no mirrors, you literally cannot see your own face, but you can feel the itch. You scratch your scalp and feel a heavy snowstorm of white, scaly dandruff falling onto your shoulders. You touch your forehead and feel a painful, throbbing red zit, and then you run your hand through your hair, and clumps of it fall out. Would you be covered in pimples, plagued by permanent, itchy flakes? Or would you go completely bald? Today, we are answering the 3 burning questions that your dermatologist secretly wonders about. Did ancient humans get acne? Did they have dandruff? And did they go bald? Spoiler alert, the answers will completely change the way you think about your own skin. Let's start with the first question, acne. The harsh truth is, yes, ancient humans definitely got pimples. The biological gene responsible for clogged pores is older than humanity itself. Millions of years ago, our primate ancestors had the exact same sebaceous glands that produce the oils which feed acne-causing bacteria. So, a caveman's face was basically a factory for blackheads, whiteheads, and deep, painful cysts. But here is the massive twist. Ancient humans got acne way less frequently than we do today. In fact, anthropologists who have studied the mummified remains of hunter-gatherers have found that their skin was almost entirely free of blemishes. Why? The secret lies in their dinner plates. Ancient hunter-gatherers ate exclusively wild plants, lean game meats, nuts, and seasonal berries. Their diet was strictly paleo. They had 0 processed sugar, no candy bars, no soda, no dairy, and absolutely 0 refined carbohydrates. You see, when we eat sugar and white bread, our blood sugar spikes, which causes our bodies to dump massive amounts of insulin into our bloodstream. That insulin spike triggers a hormonal cascade that forces your oil glands to go into hyperdrive, clogging your pores and creating a feeding frenzy for acne bacteria. In the prehistoric wilderness, that entire biochemical pathway simply didn't exist. But then, around 10,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution struck humanity. Humans suddenly discovered that they could cultivate wild wheat, barley, and grains. They started grinding them into flour and baking the very first loaves of bread. And the moment they started stuffing their faces with these heavy, carbohydrate-rich foods, their immune systems freaked out. Their hormone levels skyrocketed, and for the first time in human evolution, acne exploded across their faces like an alien invasion. Think about that the next time you eat a giant bagel. Your face isn't having a reaction to the grain itself, it's reacting to the agricultural revolution as if it's a foreign biological invader. So, what did an ancient caveman do when a massive, painful cyst erupted on his nose? No pimple patches, no tweezers, no Lancome. First, they would walk to a muddy riverbank, scoop up a thick, gloppy handful of wet clay, and smear it all over their face to draw out the oils. It was the world's first clay mask. But when the zit refused to go away, they resorted to extreme measures. They took a sharpened, jagged piece of black volcanic flint, held it up to their own cheek, and sliced that pimple wide open themselves. They drained the pus with their bare fingers and hoped desperately that the wound wouldn't get infected. There were no antibiotics. If it turned septic, they died. They were their own dermatologists, using crude rocks to hack away at their own skin because they had absolutely no other choice. Now let's move to the second uncomfortable question, dandruff. Did ancient humans have itchy, flaky, embarrassing scalps? Absolutely. And not just a little bit. It was probably a permanent, miserable condition. The culprit is a microscopic, naturally occurring yeast called Malassezia. This fungus feeds on the natural sebaceous oils that your scalp produces. And here is the kicker. Every single mammal that has hair and produces skin oils carries this exact same fungus. A woolly mammoth, a saber-toothed tiger, and your prehistoric ancestors all had it. So to put it bluntly, a caveman's head was a massive, greasy buffet for this fungal infection. But here's the kicker. Ancient humans didn't shampoo. They didn't have head and shoulders. They had absolutely no way to wash the grease out of their hair. Most of the time, they simply let their hair get heavily matted, dirty, and thick with natural oils. Occasionally, if they happened to live near a freezing cold river or a glacier runoff, they would dunk their head in the ice-cold water and aggressively scrub their scalp with their bare, dirty fingers. But cold water doesn't kill fungal yeast. It just temporarily clumps the dirt together. As a result, they had a permanent, crusty, unbearably itchy scalp. And how did they deal with that relentless, torturous itch? They didn't have a comb. They grabbed a sharp, jagged seashell, a rough, splintery piece of tree bark, or simply a pointed wooden stick, and they aggressively dragged it across their scalps until they bled. They basically scraped their own heads raw. And ironically, the open wounds they created with those crude tools became the perfect breeding ground for secondary bacterial infections. You essentially traded dandruff for a deadly scalp infection. But naturally, some ancient groups got a lot smarter. They accidentally discovered that if you take whitewood ashes from a dead campfire and mix them with a little bit of water, it creates a highly alkaline, soapy lye solution. They would rub this harsh, stinking mixture into their thick, greasy hair. It smelled absolutely terrible. It burned their eyes, and it made their scalps sting like they were on fire. But chemically, it stripped the grease clean off their heads, and that sudden drop in natural oils starved the dandruff yeast to death. It was the world's very first scalp treatment. It wasn't a pleasant shampoo, but if you've ever seen an archaeologist's sketch of a caveman brushing his hand through his hair and a massive snowstorm of white flakes falling onto his shoulders, you know exactly why they figured out that ash wash was worth the burn. Okay, now for the third, most depressing and most shocking question. Did ancient humans go bald? The answer is a massive, undeniable yes. The specific genetic marker responsible for androgenetic alopecia, which is the scientific term for male pattern baldness, is incredibly ancient. Our ancestors, living in the Pleistocene epoch, carried this gene. But here is the dark, terrifying side of baldness in prehistory. It was practically a death sentence. Imagine it is 100,000 years ago, and you are a 35-year-old caveman living in the middle of the last ice age. The temperature drops to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit at night. Your hair is your only natural thermal blanket. It traps the heat from your body and keeps your skull warm. But if your hair completely falls out, you instantly lose that insulation. Without hair trapping warm air against your head, your brain becomes severely vulnerable to life-threatening hypothermia. Within a few weeks of losing your hair, you would be shivering violently, and you would likely freeze to death in your sleep. But ancient humans were stubborn survivors. They didn't just accept death. They invented the world's very first hair system, animal fur. They would track down a gray timber wolf or a thick-furred bear, kill it, skin it, and take the entire pelt. They would wrap it around their shiny, bald heads like a heavy woolen cap, tie it tightly under their chin with a strip of leather, and wear it as a permanent, life-saving hat to keep warm. And here is the fascinating psychological twist. Because they didn't have mirrors or reflective glass, they couldn't see their own baldness easily. They only ever saw their own reflection in murky, wavy puddles of muddy water. So they didn't obsess over hair loss the way modern men do today. They just put on their wolf hat and got on with their lives. But as civilization evolved, our relationship with baldness changed completely. Take the ancient Egyptians, for example. In the searing 110-degree heat of the North African desert, they actually shaved their entire heads bald on purpose, just to stay cool and avoid deadly parasitic lice. And to shave those heads, they developed incredibly sharp, precision-crafted obsidian and flint razors. Yes, they shaved their scalps completely bare with sharp volcanic rocks. But the Egyptian elite wanted to look fashionable, so they would wear massive, heavy, curled wigs made entirely of human hair and tightly woven plant fibers. They even had a specialized wig room in their palaces. Then came the Romans, who actually passed legislation against baldness. Roman soldiers with thinning hair were considered unmasculine, and some even tried bizarre remedies like rubbing crushed mouse heads and bear fat into their scalps. So baldness was definitely prevalent. But the modern, crippling societal panic over hair loss didn't really exist until we invented clear, polished glass mirrors and eventually social media. When you can't see your own reflection, you don't know what you're missing. So what is the ultimate takeaway from this 100,000-year journey through human dermatology? Did ancient humans get acne? Yes, but only heavily after they invented bread and started eating agricultural carbs. Did they get dandruff? Yes, and they spent the majority of their waking hours scratching their heads violently with jagged sticks and shells. Did they go bald? Yes, and they wrapped their heads in the bloody, dead pelts of wolves just to survive a freezing winter night. But here's the crazy, beautiful part. They did not care. They were not staring at themselves in polished bronze mirrors. They didn't have Instagram influencers whispering into their ears that their pores were too big or that their hairline was receding. They were waking up in the pale blue dawn, gripping their wooden spears, hunting giant hyenas, and desperately trying to gather enough calories to keep their children alive for one more day. Our ancestors willingly put wet, stinking dirt on their faces, rubbed scorching wood ash lye into their scalps, and wore dead animals on their heads. And they were perfectly, completely, blissfully fine. So, the next time you stand in your clean, perfectly lit bathroom and spot a single tiny pimple or a stray flake of dandruff, just take a deep breath and remember, you are living in an era of unimaginable, luxurious comfort. A pimple isn't a biological disaster. It is a quiet, humble reminder that you are eating way better and living way longer than any caveman in history ever did. And if you are currently worrying about going bald, just buy a simple, cheap hat. The cavemen had the right idea all along. They didn't care, and honestly, neither should you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.